Okay, welcome everyone. This is take two, if you've been watching online, of the MRC Modular Project session. First off, we're going to go through just a quick introduction on what a modular railway is. We're going to look at the key specifications, the data and electronics setup. So really go through the theory first. Have a little break for 15-20 minutes, and then we'll go over the actual practical putting together the kit. Okay. Just before we head off into the presentation, just a quick word of thanks to various people who've helped get this together and trained up on the video casting and so on. Thanks to Danny and John for helping me out last week, for Gus, who's going to be my sort of technical operator here and also taking part in the project, and to Rob as well, who helped organise things. So thank you very much for that. Okay, so what is a modular railway? I think we all kind of have a basic idea of what a modular railway is. It is basically a set of small baseboards that combine together to form a much larger layout that can be completely modular. In other words, it can contain certain modules or not contain them. They can be organised many together or few together. It really is very flexible. I think the main thing as well is it allows the user to work on a very small layout. You know, some layouts can take many years to put together. And actually, I think probably I'd be one of the people who tried to put a layout together and it just hasn't worked out, and you have to start again because, you know, the electrics aren't right, or the track doesn't align properly, or you've got ballast on the rails or something like that. And, you know, you've got this huge project you have to do. So this allows you to get involved with all the techniques, all the ideas, without having to spend hours and hours and hours doing it, or having to redo it. You know, it's perfectly possible to start a module, decide you don't like it, or you can improve it, and to redesign it again because it's a smaller thing. On the show, on the display here, are some photographs of a recent exhibition in Germany that shows the kind of extent of what you can do. This is the modular project of the European Modular Club. And I think this contained about 40 modules, maybe more. And each module has been designed separately at home and put together in this exhibition. And you can see it's pretty elaborate. And also look at the variation between the different styles. So here you've got kind of town scene, here you've got a different scene. Down here, there's more of a kind of mountain scene. So it really depends on what the user wants to put together. And this particular club are very flexible on how their users design the modules. But it all comes down to, you know, they've got to connect together. So that's the most important thing. At the bottom, I put a picture of a layout that I built for the Model Railway 200 competition last year. This was organised by PICO. I think there were about 200 to 500 entries. Mine didn't win, but the reason I'm showing it here is just an example of what you can do on a very small board. This is much smaller than our board, and with a straight piece of track. And here I've done a model of a street I visited in Hanoi in Vietnam, where there's a train, literally it's called Train Street, and the trains actually run down the street with only a few feet between the walls, and people literally sit in cafes against the windows and things, watching the train goes by. And it's quite well, it's a little bit controversial at the moment because they've had quite a few accidents with people getting run over by the train, but it's a big spectacle. Okay, so what are the objectives? So the most important objectives is to involve as many members as possible where they own and design their own mini layout. That's the key thing here. A lot of the club layouts are quite big, they're long-term, quite extensive project, and I'm sure that many of you, including myself, sometimes feel a little bit intimidated by the sort of standard that projects like Copenhagen Fields are built to, and really, you know, we're kind of not taking part because we're worried we'll mess it up or so on. So this is an option for you to design your own railway. Yes, we'd like it to be lovely and perfect, but it probably won't be, and that's okay. The whole idea is that you have a go, and you do the very best that you can, and we'll have lots of help going forward in this next year to help you achieve that. I think there will naturally be a little bit of competition. People will look at each other's boards and go, well, I could do a bit better than that, or mine's better than yours, but that's not the main objective here. The main objective is for you to have a go and to really get involved. It loops around using a loop wire system. This example of one, capture one. And this carries all the various signals that we need from one board to another, and each board will be connected with one of these. And these go into a little circuit board, which comes with the kit. And the circuit board actually will take these connectors, this is from one board to another board. And then at the bottom here, there is a set of user terminals where you will take all the feeds for various things that you want to take. So there's separate feeds for DC, two DC, two DCC, a DCC bus, and also a 12-volt for lighting and so on. So you'll know if you connect your wiring to this, that's the electricity that will be provided. And from there, you take just thin wire droppers to various points on the track. The track that you get provided if you just want to do a straight through section is this, comes with the kit. Code 75 flex track, although you will need to keep it fairly straight. And you will then connect this together using a rail liner at each end. And a little bit more about those in a moment. The other point here is there should be a scenic break between the boards. Now, if you're doing one board, that's to the left of the board. If you're doing two boards, it can be to the left of one board. So you don't have to do a scenic break on every board, as long as you've got it to the left. And that will mean that you separate off what you're doing from what somebody else is doing. So it's perfectly possible for your train to go through, 1950s LNER to modern day, or even a continental setup. It's entirely up to you. The only stipulation on the track is that the track should be straight within 15 centimeters of the end where the alignment is. Because if it's curved at that point, you're going to get dog legs and things, and that's not going to be helpful. So that's the only stipulation at each end. But if you look at that, it doesn't give you really a lot of possibility to bend the track on a single board. If you've got two boards or more, you can do that because you'll have plenty of room. But on a single board, it's probably better that you keep it straight. But if you've got more than two boards, you can do whatever you want to do. Bear in mind the track bed is raised 6 millimeters, a bit more about that in a minute, and also you've got a cork bed on top of that. So the total height above the baseboard is 9 millimeters for the track position, and that's pretty critical. You've got to keep the track at that level, because otherwise we won't be able to interoperate. I don't really think that the uphill, downhill sections are good, unless you've got probably 3 boards. You could do an uphill section if you wanted to, but probably better to keep that simple. Backboard, hopefully we'll get our president Tim along to do some instruction on how to paint up a backboard, but that can be optional, and it would be to the back of the board. The boards are basically asymmetric. You've got more room at the back of the board for scenic development than you have at the front. And that's a little bit deliberate. If you put it dead center, it doesn't give you much room to do anything. So the whole idea of moving it to slightly off center is to give you that opportunity. Okay, in terms of electrical, I've covered that really before, but this provides power and data connections. It has to be kept the same per each board, otherwise we'll have all kinds of shorts and problems. Basically, you've got two lots of DCC or DCC, or you can have one wire, and that is for each track. You've got 12 volts, which is just a standard 12 volts for accessories, and then a DCC or other bus wire, which can be used to control things like points and automated functionality. Again, you don't have to use that. That's there just so that you can. But predominantly, people will just be using the 12 volts and the standard track power. And you take that power off on the circuit board. So this is your incoming power on the board, which plugs in, and then there's some screw terminals at the bottom that will be in line. So you can just take off the various power and you drop the wires to the circuit. Okay, control will be per line. So up and down line, it can be both DCC, it can be both analog, or it can be one or either. So if you take that, the O-Gauge Guild, they run a system where they run analog on one line and DCC on the other, and they can swap them and change around. It's probably a good idea to have anything you want to control, like points and signals and things, on the back side of the board. And then under that instance, you'd be running on that line, because otherwise, again, you could get confusion. So, I mean, some of those things we'll have to work out as we go along. So my advice would be, don't try and do something too elaborate until we've had our first operating session, so we get a chance to kind of figure out what the problems are, and go from there. Yeah, I put in DCC control in wiring using extensions. Obviously, if you've got an extension and you've got a point like this one coming off to whatever you've got downstream, that needs to be isolated, because we can't have, control going off on those tracks without, it's got to be isolated from the main line. Basically, it's very similar to a real railway, basically. Can't do that. So if you want to operate a shunter, if you've got DCC, that's not a problem, because you can just wire the DCC straight in and use the DCC controls to deal with that. If it's analog, then you'll probably have to provide your own controller if you want to do that. So the main line will be operated by the group controller, but you will need to provide your own power if you want to operate points and sidings and so on. And then, as I already mentioned, the one section here is just standard 12 volt. I mean, I will decide, or we will decide, what level we're going to put that in at, because you obviously get voltage drop over a long distance. So we might put it in at about 14 to 16, which hopefully will give us a reasonable voltage throughout the whole system. And also we have the option, and you'll see in a minute how this setup would work, to put a booster in every so often, so that you get power around. I mean, that system I showed you in Germany was absolutely massive, probably twice the size of the John Anning Hall, if not more. And that only used one set of boosters. Admittedly, it was N-gauge, but it had many, many trains running. So I think the potential is quite good. Okay, so this gives you an example of how it might look when we come to run an operating section here. In orange, we've got sections that will be owned by the club. So we have a couple of fiddle yards, we have a passing loop, which in this case is going to be a station, and some corner sections. These do or do not need to be used. So, for example, we can have a straight system where it will go along one line. We can have a reduced system with maybe 4 or 5 user boards all in the line. It really is very flexible. as to how that's laid out. But this is what we've agreed with the club, and these sections will be kept here in Keen House. Your sections, unfortunately, cannot be kept in Keen House and will have to be taken home. So for that reason, these are operating sections will probably take place on Sundays, which will allow for easier parking for everyone, and the ability to bring the board in and so on. Although these boards are actually light enough, depending on how you construct it, to actually carry on public transport. I think my experiences from the boards I'll show you in a moment is that you will need to build some sort of box protection if you're going to do that. We'll have a look at that now, how you put it through that. As you can see, this is quite a layout. I mean, this is nearly 8 meters long, just with 12 using it. So it's going to fill this way. And hopefully, if we all get cracking and we get it to a reasonable standard, then we'll be exhibiting at Festival Row and Nottingham together. But that's a big if, depending on how well we will do. Okay, so I'm just going to move over. Hopefully, this is going to follow me. Can you see the kit there, Gus? Right. Okay, so this is what you get. You get the base board, laser cut base board, all the components. We'll go and put that together in a moment. You get 2 lengths of cork bed. You get the actual track bed, which is part of the laser cut kit, with the actual positioning of the track really clearly marked, so it's not hard. And then in the accessory pack, you get glue, you get some instructions, and you get all the various bits that you need. So the circuit board, which will need to be mounted on the underneath of the board, with the various wiring labelled there. So digital analog 2, 12 volt and bus. You get some bus wire, enough to connect up that. And most important, you get a pair of rail lines. My advice is not to try and install these straight away. So what I'm suggesting is that you leave the end of the track by about 4 sleepers worth, with the sleepers removed. You remove 4 sleepers from each end. So first of all, you've got to kind of cut it to length because it's a little bit longer than the actual baseboard. And then once you've done that, take 4 sleepers out at each end, but leave about 5 millimeters of track hanging on the rail, hanging over the edge of the board. And the reason for that is that when we come to the part where we install those track aligners, it's going to be much easier to do that. It will all here together, and your module is here, and we get them aligned perfectly. Now, to those people who can't be here, what we'll be doing is providing an actual template, metal template, for you to align these yourself. But it's probably quite a skill to get this installed. These units have to be soldered on, and they have to be absolutely precise to the template. Otherwise, you're going to get disconnections in one line. The way these work, I mean, it's difficult with this camera to actually see correctly, but they've got a little kind of pattern cut in the top there that actually with the lines 2 together. So I'll get another one out. You'll see that they come together like this, and they align horizontally like that. Vertical alignment will be done by just adjusting the wing nuts and bolts that hold the board together, and the feet and legs to get level with the spirit level once we're all together. That is relatively easy to do. It's the horizontal alignment. If that's out, that is really hard to get that connected. So that's why I've asked that you leave the end point so you can fix your track all the way along, but just leave the end with the sleepers out loose, and just slightly over the edge of the board. Again, the reason for that is once you solder in the track aligners, then you then just trim off with a diamond saw. We can trim off the end of each track and get it so that the gap between each board in the track is as close as we can possibly get it. Whereas if you try and do it to the board, inevitably, once you put the track aligners in, it's going to move around and you're going to get one track short from the other and so on. So it's important to get that right. Whilst we're talking about the track, you'll notice it's very bendy, flexi track, and it can go out of alignment very quickly. I think the best way is to get small ruler or board just to run along this and get this straight as you can. I mean, if you've got track sectors, even better, but that doesn't really matter. But certainly, we'll need, having it kind of like that is not really acceptable. So, unless you intend to do that. So we're doing a straight section. We need to make sure it's as straight as possible. I mean, one way you can do it is just to run a ruler along one of the rails. But take your time. How you fix the track to the board onto the board is entirely up to you. My personal way of doing it, and everyone's different, is to use Copydex, because Copydex has a huge amount of answering. It's strong enough to hold the track in a good position, yet it can easily be pulled up. And if you do put it up, it's easy just to use your finger to rub off the rubber and redo it. Whereas if you use PVA or track pins, it's much harder to get the track up, and then it's quite delicate, so you can break it. But so that's entirely up to you. We're quite happy. I'm sure other people have other methods of doing it: track pins, screws, whatever you want. But yeah, try it and make sure it's straight. Okay. Right, a couple of things. In terms of how this mounts when we're operating, the system I've chosen is to use adjustable legs, and we can have a look at my board in a moment, and I can show you those. They will be mounted on leg bases that will fit in the bottom. Unfortunately, for the earlier kits, I haven't got those together with the kit, but there are holes drilled in the baseboard that will actually make sure you can fit those. To be honest with you, we're not going to need those until you come to the operating session, because we're going to supply you with two legs, because to connect each board together, you only need two legs, unless you've got more than one board. If you've got more than one board, then you're going to need to buy a couple of extra legs. Either we can get them for you, or you can go and get them yourself, because they come from IKEA and they cost £7.50 each. So don't spend a lot of money when you can get them. So if they go wrong, like the thread goes or something like that, then IKEA will refund your money and they'll give you a new one. So they're I think they've got 12 months or even 15 months return. So it's kind of a bit of a no-brainer. But the actual bases, well, again, we'll probably supply in the operating session. So, and the legs. It may be possible as well to keep the legs at the club, and we can make a decision on that with management later on, because the legs don't take up a lot of room. But we'll see. The connection cables we're going to keep in the club because they, we want to make sure they're in good condition all the way through. Unless you're operating on more than one board, then you'll need one of these to connect the two boards together. But if you've just got a single board, then you can just tap in. So if you want to test the power, you can just tap in here, and that will take you to the camera. So it's quite straightforward to do. Okay. Okay. Under pricing, we've agreed. The club management being really keen on getting this project going. So we've agreed that the first kit that is available to members will be at £59, which is actually a reduction of about £30 from the cost price. Just to be aware that the cost is costs that I've negotiated with key suppliers like Grange and Buller for the boards and rails of Sheffield for the track and so on. typically it's about a 10 to 25% discount from what you'd have to buy if you went online and just bought stuff. No problem with you buying stuff that you need. You know, it's your track, your layout. But it's important that you know we help members out as much as possible. If you haven't, if you need more than one board, then each additional board is going to cost you 89, which is the absolute cost price of the board. There is no profit for that. This is, we want to get this going as a major project. So it's really important that you know we get people as many as possible taking part. I've got handles online, which I've discovered makes it much easier to move them about. It's, you know, it's quite awkward shapes to hold, particularly when you've got a track on them or buildings. So I've just put a handle online. I suggest that buildings and other things are not glued down too much, because you know you are going to get some damage to some of those things. So it's probably better to store those separately. Right, so the kit and any additional kits, we've set up a system on Hugh's sum up. So you can just pay that directly to the club. If we get enough people together who want additional stuff like points, track, additional things, then we can put in one bulk order to Rails, and then members can then buy that. Some pricing for that. You know, there'll probably be a little bit of a margin, you know, because I think we need to cover things like the cost of sum up and all this stuff, but credit card fees, but nothing. I mean, to be honest with you, the whole idea is this is your layout. If you want to go and buy track from somewhere else and do your own thing, that's just great. You know, we're introducing the subject of the board, getting you started. What you do after that is all right. What we're going to do is we're going to take a break now for 20 minutes or so, and then we'll continue on with a practical session. Gus is going to be our guinea pig, and sorry, it was Robin. Sorry, Gus and Robin will be our guinea pigs, and they'll try to put one together just to give you an idea of some of the kind of questions that you might have. You know, in building the project. Probably what I'm going to do is I'm going to move things around a little bit. We'll leave the presentation running without the sound, and I'll just sort of focus in on the kit that I built, so you can have a look at that whilst we're on the day. Okay, see you in 20 minutes. Hello. Okay. Hello everyone. Am I looking at the camera?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to have a little practical session now. What we're going to do is focus in on the kind of build, and Gus and Robin will be putting one of these together. As they do that, there's bound to be questions, and we'll cover that, which will cover anything that you need to know. And I'll try and bring out as many points as I can think about that I experienced when putting one of these together as well. Once we've done that, obviously things need to dry, so it'll be left here in the tub till Thursday probably, just drying. And we will clamp it together with clamps. Now, with the clamps, obviously these are the plug clamps. If you have your own clamps, it's great, but you don't actually need the clamps. You can use anything to hold this together, and we'll cover that as well, either like books or whatever, just to make sure it's weighted down, so that you get a good job. Okay. Yeah, so what we're going to do is we're going to cover a dry run first, just to go through that. I'll probably do that. Baseboard assembly, the guys will do that. We're not going to lay the track, but we'll just show you where that goes, and how we're going to align it, how the electronics work, where they're going to be aligned to, and just a few things to think about in your design. So we'll move on to that. To help you, whoops, what's that? Yeah, to help you with just identifying the bits that we're talking about. When you get the kit, you will get various sections, the longer bits of the full length ones, and you get some cross sections. This is probably where the most confusion will be, because there's two of these for each end. And then you get some cross bracing, and the tabletop. In addition, not in the kit, there'll be some leg mounts, which will come later. We'll be putting those together on the first operating session. So just to bear that in mind, they're not actually missing, but you will get those eventually. All right, probably best to do this in a practical way, but most important thing is, when you're doing this, it's a good idea to get a pencil and just mark all the parts, because you can get confused, particularly with the end boards. They look the same, but it's the way that they align together in the laser cutting that you'll need to do. So, take your time. Don't stick this together and then have to put it apart, because it probably won't stand that. The PVA will stick this really hard. So, you've got a one-shot chance. So the best thing to do is to put it together dry to start with, just so you know how it goes together. If you need to, get a pencil, number the parts so that you know what you're doing.
Just glue, no pins or anything.
Just glue.
Okay.
Well, you can put pins,
Yeah.
and screws. It's up to you.
Okay.
But I've just used glue. The one important thing we're going to do at the end is to just show where the PCB gets mounted, because unfortunately I didn't get Grange and Holler to actually put positioning marks for those, so it's not critical, but just roughly where that will go. Baseboard alignment we will do on the first operating session. So what we're going to ask you to do, I already mentioned this, is to leave the end of the track unfixed by about 10, 15 centimeters or so, just so that you can move it, we can move it around and get it precisely aligned, and then that can be fixed on the operating session. Again, my advice, get on with your other scenery, leave the ballasting, you're going to be ballasting, until after the first operating session, where you've got your board aligned properly to the template. Because once you ballast it, it's like really hard to do that. But if you need to ballast, then just keep the ballast away from the ends, that centimeters at the end, so that you've got a chance to move the track slightly to position it correctly. If you can't attend the operating session, then what we'll be able to do is to lend you a metal aluminium template to actually make sure that you match it to the next board. But it would be better if people came along and had it aligned properly. Okay, so we're going to switch cameras now and look at how we put this together. So, guys, if you want to grab your coffees and come over. So, got 2 minutes for track. Got the bag of bits. Got the glue. That's so annoying when get it. You get the little circuit board. You don't get the connectors and the cables at the moment unless you're doing more than 2 boards, in which case we give you a connector cable and they just plug in here. All you need to working to pass wire, so really just some 2 plugs need to be have proper wires going to plugs and we'll go. So the base board is just taken to the taken. I should have removed beforehand, but well, this board with the lines on it is for the tap link. If you vary off the straight and do more than 1 board, then you'll have to do your own version of this. But it is exactly 6 millimeters high. And it needs to be kept at that level. Doing the straight section is pretty straightforward. These lines match exactly the width of the board. Okay, these are the various figs that are the cross members. And there's 4 of these. 4 of these to center board. Just to so we have 2 boards like this, 3 holes in the center and smaller holes at the end. We have 2 boards with a kind of keyhole mark to them, like that. And 2 boards. These then in addition, have top boards. Go for a straight through plan. That's I think this rag can be painted whole. If you want to do an open frame, so you want to go below the level of the baseboard with your scenery. Again, I wouldn't recommend that unless you're experienced and you know what you're doing. What you will need to do is you'll need to kind of cut away sections of this so that you give the board some rigidity, or you're going to have to put some cross braces on the actual frame, which is going to get more involved. But otherwise, it won't be rigid enough to start moving around. So, and again, you know, you need to keeping the height to 6 mil above this is critical. Otherwise, the rails don't align. Okay, so I looked at that to one side. You don't need that right away. So that's the way it goes. So you have length of the board at each end. You'll notice that there is a flip pattern that take 2 lots of the end. Okay. Also, and this is critical, at one end, another one, got 3 small holes. To hold. This is to mount the legs. This must be to the right hand side of, so like that. To make sure those 3 holes on each head are that. You'll also notice on the end board that you've got the holes marked on 2 of them, but not on the others. And that's again critical to get that because they screw in 6 places around each corner to give it strength. So you won't use those to begin with, but just got to be in the right place. It's not the end of the world if you make a mistake in that respect, because we can just drill some extra holes. It's just neater. Okay. Right, so what I'm going to try and do is to put this together. It's a little while since I've done this, so just bear in mind that I may be a bit rusty. And what we're going to do is, as I said earlier, put this together in a dry way so that we get familiar with what's what. It's pretty straightforward. You'll see that the holes and the markings on each end correspond to the also the tabs correspond to the hole. So, you know, it's not rocket science to put it together. Pretty straightforward. The tabs at the top go to the top. The bottom is the flat section. Okay. Right. It's a good idea to have some space and to have a set square. It could be any set square. You could use something like a set square, like a book or something similar, but you need to keep this as right angled aligned as possible. Again, if your board is skewed, you're going to have massive problems. So really important to get some kind of square to keep those boards aligned. Okay, right. I, like an idiot, have chosen that one. And just bear with me. This is why you need to familiarize yourself.
What have I done here? I've chosen the wrong board. Right, start again. Okay, so it's the ones with the big holes that go in the center position. These are actually in the instructions all labeled, so it's quite obvious what it is. There we go. Right, end boards. You have two types of end board. You have one like that, and you have one like that. This one goes in first, and that one goes in second. How do you tell the difference? You'll see on the one that goes on the inner section, it's got a tiny little tab on the end versus the two sort of more centered ones on the outside board. Okay, this is just giving it key strength. So these go on first, and you do that by kind of lifting up and putting in like so. Like that. And then these ones go over the top. Get these right. If they're awkward, you should make sure that they clip, because they're very accurately cut. So if you're having problems, then you're likely that you've got them wrong way around. Okay, so just put this one in. This is all part of the fun. There you go. Right. And you can see already this has gone a bit skew with. So you have to mess about. And it's a good idea to do that anyway, because it keeps you familiar with how it goes together. And just clip that one in. It does this because you're not obviously got it glued together. But it's important that you do this, because otherwise, if you're not familiar with the bits, you start gluing, it's going to be a problem. Could I ask one of my assistants here just to come around this side and hold this together whilst we do this? Yeah. That's so accurately cut that it. There you go. Okay, we're nearly there. Right. Okay. Right. So again, make sure that you are as right angled as you can be with a square. And then this is the second board that goes in on the end. And already I messed it up. Yeah, hold it together. There we go. Right. We all good? Okay. So a square is needed. The other thing you can do if you don't have a square, as I said, use anything that's got a right angle, like a book, thickish book, or anything you've got that will give you a square. The reason being is to put the top on, you're going to have it square, otherwise it just won't fit. You don't need to force this. It will fit. So again, you have to be very gentle how you do this because we haven't put these together properly. But bit by bit. You should be able to get this to.
Start by inserting the cross pieces into the board.
You could do that way. Yeah, that's probably a better way to do it. Actually, do it upside down. Yeah, it's actually gone in now. There you go. Gus has come up with a good point that actually to do this upside down and fit the parts into the top is probably the easier way to do this.
And then it almost keeps itself square because they're all in the slot.
Yeah. I mean, again, it's you know, if you've got them in the slots, it's that. I mean, it's just that the important thing is that you get it together right and make sure that you identify the end bits from the inner end bits because they are completely different. And you can see that's what gives the board its strength. Right, before we put this together properly, your trackboard is marked and fits exactly between those two etch lines. Again, there you go. Don't do this or this. Yeah. Make sure that fits and it's exactly to the end. And again, I would glue the baseboard section first before you put the track bed down.
But then you glue the track bed onto the
board as well. Yeah, just. And then once that's together, the track cork bed goes in between the two etch lines and gets trimmed at each end to match. Again, keep it as straight as you can. Just some PVA or whatever to put that down. And then your track fits exactly centered on that cork. So not like that, not like that, but centered. And again, use something straight like a ruler to get that as straight as you possibly can, because what we don't want is a kind of wiggly track. I mean, you'll see that in real life, actually, that tracks do move around, but you need to try and get it as straight as you can. And here you can see that you've got a little bit left over at the end of each to trim off. And so you would then cut off these last 4 sleepers, use a knife here and here, or a pair of clippers. Don't cut the track. Yeah, leave the track slightly overhanging because that allows us to trim it properly. And again, on this section, and then you put the second track down like so. And there you go. And this goes here. Okay. The track aligners, when we do them, will fit here, like this, at the end here, and obviously where you cut away that track will then sit above those, and they will then be soldered on. If you're going to do this at the club, I'll bring in some solder paste to make it a lot easier to do, and a decent soldering iron, and we can all help to get those fitted. And they then screw down, there's a screw hole there, and you can screw them down so they will be exactly aligned, or you can stick them down. But that all has to happen in one operation because you have to have the template here to make sure that they're exactly aligned. But as I said, leave that aside and fix your track down, get on with the rest of it, whatever you want to do. And then we'll do that in the first operating session. If you can't make it to the club, we'll provide a template that you can have at home to align that. Okay, guys, if you want to familiarize yourself with the board, and Gus, I guess you've already got your board, haven't you? Yeah, so this is your board. So there's your glue. Do it your way, which is different, slightly different to my way. Oh, sorry, these bits, I forgot those. These are cross braces that fit in the center section, and they literally go together like that and like that. Okay, that you do last.
I'm doing it upside down.
Yep.
Do it as I go.
Yep.
Do we need to put anything underneath here so we can go everywhere? Or
Sorry.
do we put anything under table?
Yeah. Have we got some paper? Mm. Carol had some cloth, didn't she? Let me go and see if I can find something. Well, there was some plastic around because we'd had it for the tree building sessions. Mm. they will be included in the kit from start, but it's just easier this way because we've had to buy some separate bits, so it's the way it's come together. And what else can I point out? Oh, I've just put in a cable here, a dropper, just to connect up the power feed to my board. So if you've got your own controller, be it analog, soldered and stuck down the ends, it's going to be a hell of a lot easier to sort out those kind of problems. Once you've soldered these track aligners, that's it. They're done. So you need to do that. Just a little bit of a correction. I said earlier that to remove 4 sleepers, I think actually you could get away with moving 3, which would just give it a little bit more strength. So correction on what's in the instructions and what I said earlier, I would just remove 3 sleepers from each end and have, as I say, 1 millimeter or 2 of the track hanging over the edge, just so that you're not, you know, you've got something to play with, basically. Right. On this one, just to show you, I've chosen to have my second board as an open frame, which is a little bit more difficult to put together. And one of the reasons I put the strengtheners in. The reason being is that this board will actually go down a level, and there'll be the canal is here, you can see, is on a lock, and then the canal will go at a lower level here and eventually sort of disappear. So, and there'll be a bridge here, and the countryside will come down. Not hard really, but again, more advanced than just doing it on a flat top and building up. But I wanted to give some idea of kind of undulating scenery, but it depends on what you're doing. It's entirely up to you. But if you want to go down, that's how you do it. Leave it open and put some strengtheners in. And under here, you can see that I've cut a piece of board from the top to actually give it some strength internally, and then a bit on the front to strengthen the front. Otherwise, you know, it'll be a little bit weak. Okay, that's it. What we'll do is we'll make this available online. We'll sort that out a little bit later in the next few days, and that will be available for people to follow. People who've ordered a kit, I'll try and bring them to the club this coming Thursday. If not, it'll be the following Thursday. But hopefully we'll get them here this Thursday. They're pretty well shrink wrapped together, and I'll add another set of shrink wrap around the whole thing, so you can actually carry them on public transport. Save you having to bring the car in. Yeah, they'll be here from hopefully from Thursday. Oh, and sorry, one last point. Hopefully on the web there'll be a feedback section for WhatsApp or what have we, and you can send me any feedback, and we'll join everybody into a common, probably in the common WhatsApp group, so that they can ask questions and so on. Okay, thank you. Yeah, I think we'll probably give it about 8 weeks for people to get it together, and then we'll do the first sort of alignment session, where people can bring their boards in and get them aligned. Yeah. I'll try and build the alignment templates before then, so people, you know, people are running in advance, they can
take the track down for that session. Wait.
I would stick the track, as I said, about 20 centimeters in from each edge, but leave the end bit loose. Okay. And then you know, then it just gives, you only need 0.5 millimeter of movement just to get it perfectly. I mean, basically, if you're doing a straight track, these are pretty well aligned as it goes. I mean, you know, you're talking literally 0.5 millimeter to 0.5 millimeter. Well, you can adjust it either way with about 20 centimeters of adjustment, well, 15 or 20 centimeters along the end here, but fix it down in the middle. And again, either use screws, which I've used, or you can use glue, Copydex, and very easy with Copydex. You just get like a plasterer's trowel, and you can just go underneath and get it off if you need to. And also the other thing with Copydex is it gives you, again, probably literally a few mils of movement over the whole thing. I think as we get more sophisticated, we can certainly build some templates that people can borrow to actually make sure the track is perfectly straight. You know, that's easy enough to do. I just haven't got around to doing that yet. Yeah. Anything else?
Fantastic. Thank you very much.
Okay, good. How long did that end up being, Gus?